Hi everyone, and welcome back to another new tutorial by Studio IC about Edge Animate, prototyping in Edge Animate. This tutorial is in a sequence of a couple of tutorials that I created before, and one of the things that I'd like to do is when I work on interactive projects, which is mostly the case, I like to make my animations in Edge Animate, not just for me, but also for my developer, so that we both understand what kind of animations I want. So by using my Photoshop mockup in Edge Animate, I can create very simple animations with Edge Animate to make sure that not only the visuals are correct, but also the animations that I like to use and the way that I like to animate different objects onto a stage, into the application, are correct and just as I want them to be. So basically it all starts again in Photoshop. That's mostly where it all starts. And for this tutorial I used a little piece of a project that I'm working on right now, which is for box spring beds. You know, the beds, the very high beds that you can buy. And for the tablet version of this box spring bed, we needed to make some sort of an application that'll allow you as a user to create your own specific box spring bed. You can choose from different options, different colors, different structures, with a front head or a back head, some sort of a mattress that you like to lay on. So you can basically adjust your own box spring bed in this application, and I'm for this tutorial going to use a small part of this application to make you understand what I do with Edge Animate when it comes to prototyping. The application basically has a couple of steps that you have to follow to create your own box spring experience, and I'm gonna start doing this with just one step, the first step basically, and the entrance screen. So in Photoshop I had one screen, which is basically your entrance screen, in which you can start your experience. You can start here, as you can see on this little button, and if you do so, you're gonna go to the second screen, and that is this screen, which gives you an example of the bed that you can choose, the options to choose your own color, and a button for more information. And if you click on one of these color options, you get a different color of bed. And if you click on more information, you get an extra screen which falls over this screen, and it'll give you more information about the bed. As you can see, it's text, it's some detailed photos, some guarantee logos, stuff like that. It is not filled in yet, so I used all kinds of Lipsum text, and it's a rough idea, but it's enough to make me understand what I need to do with this first step, and probably with all the steps in this application. To make it all animate, I use Edge Animate. So basically what I do is the old trick, which I explained to you before in other tutorials. We're going to go to this old scripts option here in Photoshop, and export layers to files is the one that I choose, and it's going to export every layer that I have to a file, which makes it easy for me to build the whole application again in Edge Animate. I did this before, so I'm not going to walk you through all the different images that I need to use for the different steps. I prepped it all before, so if we dive into Edge Animate and we're going to get rid of our title, you can see we have on the stage a couple of layers. And the first thing that you probably notice is that we have 4 layers that have to do with the iPad. It basically is like this. This is the bottom of the iPad, this is the right side, this is the left side, and this is the top. So we have the frame of our iPad on our screen. And why don't we use one PNG for this with transparency in the middle? You might ask. Well, there's a simple solution, a simple reason for that, and that is that with one PNG, even if it's transparent, it'll look at this PNG as one layer, one div layer, which means that everything underneath that layer will not be active at all. And we want these things to be active because we want to use buttons, and we want to see how these animations, all the animations go underneath our iPad frame. So I split it all up in 4 different segments, which means that there are 4 different divs, and the middle, the white in the middle, will be editable and will be usable for interaction. Now, the first thing we need to do is we have to create our scene, and that's what I did here. As you can see, this is the entrance scene. And in this scene we have everything animated to go from this Sleeping Beauty to the first bed that we need for our first step. So if I click on this scene, you will see that there are a couple of layers in there with timelines, and it basically works like this. If you scroll through it, C is fading out and our bed is fading in with everything that is attached to our bed. That's what I like to have animated. That's what I want. This is the way that I wanted it to animate. Again, it's a prototype. In real time, in real life, I would dive a little bit deeper into all the animation aspects of this screen, but for this tutorial, it'll be enough. But that's not all that I want to animate. I also want to animate in my top menu. So I have my menu here. So first of all, I need to make sure that my menu is visible. And I click on the eye here, and now here is my menu. You cannot see much about my menu because, you know, it's all hidden, but we can click on it and then we have our menu. And as you can see, it'll wait for, say, half a second and then it'll drop down. That's what I want. So with the first screen selected, the second screen, if the bat's coming in, the menu is going to fall down. It'll look something like this. Click on start, there he is, and there's our menu. So that's basically the first screen that you as a user can interact with. Now back to Edge Animate for this one. Scene 1, we're going to click on the symbol of scene 1 and we can see what will happen to it. First of all, we got in our action line, we got some coding. Obviously, we got our stop, so it just doesn't it doesn't start animating immediately. And if we walk through this, we got a second one, which will say, if you are bads, please play. Bads is very interesting because you can see bads here. And this is our symbol bads. And in our symbol bads are basically all the colors of the bads that we like to use. And as you can see, if I click on it, this is what happens. This is the first bad, it's animating in. And then we got ourselves a label which is called color 1. And we got a label color 2, color 3, and color 4. That's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. If I click on one of these buttons here, then the color should change into the right color. As you can see, I didn't make much of a fuss of the colors. I just used the saturation tool in Photoshop to create a different color. And I created 4 colors instead of 5, because there are 5 buttons here. And if you click on the last button, you're going to go back to color 1. So that's the bads symbol, which is in the first scene. Here we go, in the scene. Next to the bad symbol, there is obviously the selection bar, with all the buttons in there that'll interact with the bats in the bats symbol. So if we click on button 1, for example, on the code for button 1, it'll say, well, go back to the stage, get yourself your symbol scene, and get the symbol bats, and stop at color 1. And color 1 is the label we just talked about. So with labels, you can specifically aim to certain points in a timeline, in a symbol, and get your way with this and make sure that you get what you want. Well, as you can understand, basically that it will, oh, excuse me, I have to click on this one here. If you are in button 3, for example, it'll say go to color 3. So this will basically work. See if it does. Obviously it will, because I tested it out, but it's nice to see your things work here. Here we go. We want the second one. It goes to color 2, color 3, color 4. Well, it doesn't really match the color of the button, but it's for, again, tutorial purposes, so that doesn't really matter. This is color 5, it goes back to the first color, and color 1 is the same color, so you don't see any difference here. So this is your selection. Now this is done with pretty simple code. If you want to know more about these codes, you can go back to the last 2 tutorials that I created, simple coding for Edge Animate part 1 and part 2. And basically I don't use nothing more than the things that we described and discussed in those 2 tutorials. And so it works. The next thing I need to do is the more information button, which will produce a layer over this first screen with more information about those bats. Now back to Edge Animate again. What did I do? Well, I created this, back to the stage, I created this scene 2, and if I click it open, you can see that everything is besides our stage, and this is all the additional information. Here we go. So if I click on this, again, we have a timeline, and that timeline will turn this thing, move this thing over our first screen, and you get all the additional information and you can click it away. So what did I need to do for that? Well, it was pretty easy. Basically, we have to go back to the first scene here. This is the scene, and we go to the more information button, which is here. More information, there it is. And if I click on it, I say, well, get your composition, get your stage, and get your symbol scene 2 and play it. That's all it does. And then this symbol here is going to play and going to move over the first scene. Back to the stage and back to scene 2, because if we are over scene 1, and we're going to go here, then we have to do something with this button here. Now, I created a symbol within scene 2, which I called scene 2 content, with everything in there, the button, the text, all these things. So if I go and need to do something with this button, I have to double click on this one here, and there's the button again. And as you can see, this is the back button, and it has some simple scripting to it. Get your composition, get your stage, get your symbol scene 2, and play this timeline in reverse. And that is this timeline, scene 2, this timeline in reverse, so it'll move back. Just for the fun of it, I thought it would be nice if my little button would turn over. As you can see, it points, it's not visible yet, it points to the left direction, and if it is there, then it turns over, so it gives a little bit more interaction, and back. And the same for if it turns back. Here we go. So I did a little bit of scripting here in our action line in scene 2. I say, well, you know, we're going to use an if statement, which means that if the state of the button is 0, then the state is going to be 1, and the symbol is going to play in reverse and different wise. So that's something I explained in Simple Coding Part 1 and 2. So I'm not going to dive too deep into this if-else statement, but it'll work for this tutorial, which means that if you are in scene 2 content and you are in the button, you can see that it has a little bit of interaction to it. It'll turn like this. That's all it does. Stop here, stop in the action, and there, stop in the action, and that's basically it. And we got ourselves obviously let's see, where do we have it? We got ourselves, no, not in this one, but in scene 2, a variable, I guess. Yeah, a variable called button state, and the button state is 0, and that'll trigger the if statement, again, as discussed in Simple Coding Part 1 and 2 for Edge Animate. So this should work, and well, it works because I already tested it. Here we go. This is our scene, this is our menu coming out, and this is more information, and there we go. Well, that's all there is to it. Bye bye, and it's gone again. Now, to me, this is a very, very simple way to create some animations. And again, it's not going to be the final animations. You have to make sure that your developer looks at it and makes it all more slick and all this. But it'll give you an idea. And sometimes I use it even to show it to clients, to give them a little bit more of a feel for what this interactive application will do for them, instead of giving them some screenshots and they have to make up their own minds about how this is going to work. Because that's sometimes not very easy to understand if you're not into interactive media or whatever. You know, your client needs to be served with the most recent and the most accurate information about what you're going to create for him or her. Well, that's it for prototyping in Edge Animate for this tutorial. We're going to dive into this a little bit deeper because I have a little bit of a plan to show you what else is possible, especially with Adobe Inspect attached to Edge Animate, but that's for another tutorial. For now, this is it. I hope you've learned something. At least I did, and see you again next time.